Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Morning Coffees with James. I'm James, and this show you are watching on the Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTubes is my morning coffee show. How you all doing today? I hope you're all doing today because I've gotten done the entire Batman saga from 1989 to 1997. I have gotten done the Batman quadrilogy. And I will say this, and before I start, Joel Schumacher didn't do anything wrong. And we need to release the Snyder... the Snyder Cut's been released. Now it's time to release the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. But before we talk about that, and before we go into any further details, I want to talk about a movie that gets shit canned so many times for being a piece of shit, for being the worst Batman movie, but also being one of the worst movies ever made, blah 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 blah. And that movie is called Batman and Robin, made by the Warner Brothers Studios and the execs, and directed by Joel Schumacher. Now I say that because Joel Schumacher directed the movie, yes, but it was made by the studio. It was like, here's the thing. Batman Forever was made by Joel Schumacher, directed by Joel Schumacher. That's a Joel Schumacher movie. Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, was made by the studios with Joel Schumacher steering the ship. And what I'm talking about is basically, if you watch those two movies back to back, watch Batman Forever first and then watch Batman and Robin, you can tell who really directed the last movie. Because I'm not trying to be mean about this too, but it's to say that like Joel Schumacher ruined Batman is kind of an understatement. And this is why people need to stop blaming the lesser people. And granted, sometimes you gotta blame a director for having bad vision and stuff like that. But Batman and Robin, it was competently made. It was competently made. This was not poorly shot. It wasn't poorly, acted. It wasn't poorly... I know people are going to be up my ass about the poorly acted. It wasn't poorly shot, stunt work. It was well crafted, but not the Batman we wanted and not how it should have been presented. Like, if you look at Batman Forever versus this, Batman Forever fits in kind of snugly with Tim Burton's Batman. Which, honestly, are now getting shit canned, too, because they're cheesy, and they're not as dark as Nolan's trilogy, or the Batman, or, I would say Ben Affleck's, but Ben's allows a little bit of that surrealism in there, a little bit, you know what I mean? Like, and that's what's missing. This was way too surreal, in the sense, because if you look at both those movies, Joel Schumacher only made one Batman movie. He guided a ship in Batman and Robin. Batman Forever is his baby. That's his movie. Joel Schumacher made that one. And that Batman is a good Batman movie. And I'm sorry to say it, folks, I'm tired of pretending it's not. Batman Returns, and Batman Forever are part of a trilogy. Batman and Robin are not part of that trilogy. It's not part of Joel Schumacher's verse. Let me put it that way. Sure, you could say, well, it's part of the Joel Schumacher verse. No. Joel Schumacher made his own universe, and if they just said, hey, Joe, we're not going to give you total control. We're going to do the same thing we did with Forever. We're going to step back and let you do what you got to do, but we're going to work together. Like, they should have. Like, and this is a cautionary tale about... not a cautionary tale, but a lesson about who makes a movie in Hollywood. Now, I'm going to talk about this real quick before I discuss the intricals of the movie and the plot. So, you look at Batman Forever. I mean, you look at Tim Burton's Batman and you look at Joel Schumacher's... Excuse me, not Joel Schumacher, I keep mentioning that. You look at Batman and Robin and then Batman Returns. Okay, let me start this over. First two Batman and Batman Forever. Both were made by the director, the creative team, and the suits, the execs of Warner Brothers. First two movies successfully well made. Everybody wanted this movie to be well made. You know, you had great tone on the first movies. You had superior casting in those movies, minus Tommy Lee Jones. You had a good story in both. You had great cast. You had a great atmosphere, great story. Everything was pretty good with those first two movies. I mean, first movies that they made. Getting to Batman Returns and Batman and Robin, these are two extremes of what happens when you give one person too much creative control than the other. So let's start with Batman Returns. That is what happens when you give Tim Burton way too much creative control in that movie. And I will say this, though, what makes me laugh is that how nobody stepped in and said, okay, this is a little too dark. This is a little... They just said, fuck it, you were successful, you're going to get too much, you're going to get all the power. And honestly, I'm kind of annoyed with how the execs just handled that. Like, granted, Batman Returns is a good Batman movie, don't get me wrong. It is Tim Burton at his finest. Those two movies are Batman movies. Those are Tim Burton movies, but those are Tim Burton Batman movies, and they are good Batman movies. So it's dark, but yet a little ridiculous. It's dark, but yet has a little sprinkles of the Adam West in there, but it has more to the comics. It has more to this dark origins. It's gothic, it's dark, it's, you know, it's grimacing, yes, and it's awesome. Then you get into, you know, Joel Schumacher's Batman. A little bit brighter, but not too dark. A little bit brighter, but a little bit more Adam West in there, but not too much. A little bit more. Just a little dash more. But still dark, still menacing, still sexual. Batman Returns and Batman Forever are pretty sexual in that sense. So they have that kind of sensuality, and they have that kind of, like, sexual flair to them, especially with 3. I mean, Returns as well. Like, well, all 3 of them did, but actually, excuse me, all 4 of them did, but Batman and Robin didn't really hit it. And that's the sad part about that. Then we get into Batman and Robin. Excuse me. Batman and Robin is what happens when you let execs take full control of the creative process and make a goddamn toy ad. Which, that's what ended up happening with Batman and Robin. That's what ended up happening with Batman and Robin. It became a fucking toy ad. And nobody wants to address that. Excuse my language, but that's the truth. It became a toy ad. Batman and Robin became a toy ad, and it could have been... If they kept that same tone from Batman Forever and carried it into the second movie, keeping Val Kilmer... Hell, you could have even kept Freeze and Ivy in the same movie, along with Bane. Honestly, I think, and this sounds strange to say, Arnold Schwarzenegger could have been a good Mr. Freeze. If they were to make him more... Okay, we can't make him like Tommy Lee Jones, where he's just, I'm overacting. This is like the Adam West show. No. If you made him kind of more in the lines of... like that dark brute, like what Two-Face should have been in that movie, which was, you know, more dark and menacing. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger can play dark, cold characters. Terminator comes to mind. Watch the first Terminator movie, and tell me that you don't see a little bit of that Mr. Freeze in there. Don't tell me you couldn't say, okay, this guy can play Freeze. Watch that movie and say, okay, he could have played Freeze. If they went with his Terminator. If they just said, hey, you know the Terminator? Go with that. Go with that, but with a little bit more human emotion in there. Not too much where you're a cold-blooded killer. You should act like one. You should act like somebody, a man on a vengeance quest. You're gonna try to say, like, and also the fact that he wants to freeze Gotham City. It should have been him going after, like, a company. Like, again, if you're gonna combine those two villains... I would have recommended, like, making Bane the main feature of that. And having Arnold Schwarzenegger be Bane, like, this big Russian, like, prisoner who just wants to fight the Bat, like, and using those two villains to his ends means. It's like, they'll destroy Gotham City, and he'll just take it over, and he can fuck up both, because he's not immune. He's immune to fucking Ivy's, you know, bullshit, and fuck off with the freezing can. I'll just bust out of there. And Patrick Stewart should have been Mr. Freeze. Let's be honest about that. Either Patrick Stewart or Anthony Hopkins. Somebody who can do that Mr. Freeze we saw in Heart of Ice in the Batman the Animated Series. That would have been amazing. But I digress. But you can tell, again, with Batman and Robin, who really made that movie. Sure, Joel Schumacher may have directed it, but who made it, who made the movie, was Suits in Hollywood, who, wanted a toy ad. And more of the Adam West. They sprinkled all that, Adam West essence right in there. They didn't care. And here's the thing, the Adam West essence was in all the Batman movies. Like, all of them. Like, from Batman and the first Batman movie. I'm not talking about from the 60s, from 66. I'm talking from 89, from 90 to 97, to 2006, to all the way to Batman Rise, The Dark Knight Rises. It should have been called Batman Rise. Why did they remove the word Batman? It's like, oh, well, we would call it Batman Begins, but we're not going to call it, we're going to call it The Dark Knight Trilogy. No, it's called Batman. Nolan's Batman. All right? Batman Rises, we're going to call it. Fuck off. Joel Schumacher, again, gets the shit can. Well, hold on, let me. There's that essence at the end of Batman Rises where he's trying to get rid of a bomb. Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. And then you've got. I think that's the problem. Too. Well, and also I wanted to. Where do I start? Okay. So, Schumacher gets the shit can for this movie. And I'm so tired of everybody saying, Joel Schumacher ruined Batman. He put nipples in. I saw the nipples on the costume. I'm not totally distracted by it. I'm not distracted by, two little things on his costume. It was in forever. Didn't care. Didn't notice. You didn't see a lot of it. And then you saw it in Batman and Robin, and you're like, alright, fine, it's there. But it didn't, poke out and hit you in the eye. You're not really distracted by that. Most of the time you were again, you were distracted by the spectacle that was was the Warner Brothers Batman and Robin. It was so big, it was so grandiose. It's still well made because it still has that flair of the extravagant there. It's still that pop culture opera, but the problem was it wasn't the artist making this movie. It didn't have the darkness that Batman Forever had, and people need to fucking realize this. Joel Schumacher didn't do anything wrong. Blame the goddamn Suits of Hollywood for that one. Blame the Suits of Warner Brothers. And they still are fucking up their own franchises too. I mean, have they stopped? Absolutely not. DC, the execs at Warner Brothers can't make a fucking competent decision, and they keep fucking everything up. By the way, fire Amber Heard and just get Emily Clark, alright? Alright? Jesus, Mary and Joseph. That's the problem with these movies. And that's the problem with the Warner Brothers. They really fucked the pooch on, doing anything. If they were to be smart, if I were to go back in time and be like, here's your end product. Bring them, disrupt the time-space continuum just to change a movie, I would. I'd be like, you see this? This is what you made, you fucks. By the way, it's one of the worst Batman movies ever. And I want to talk about the movie, too, in just a second. So give me a second, because I want to talk about the casting and stuff. I want to talk about the plot of the movie. So it takes place 2 years after Batman Forever, in a different timeline. This is the Clooney verse. This is the Warner Brothers studio made verse. Because I'm not going to blame George Clooney for this, too, as well. So I'm not. And it takes place 2 years after. Batman and Robin have been doing this for a while now, and, there's a new enemy in town by the name of Mr. Freeze, and he's stealing diamonds to power up his freeze generator to use to hijack a telescope to freeze Gotham City over to basically, hold them ransom for money. And while this is going on, we have, Batman and Robin trying to stop him. And it starts off like the regular, the first movie, Batman Forever, where Batman's going on a case, going out there doing what he does best in Gotham City, defending the streets from crazy maniacs like Mr. Freeze. The first, Batman Forever showed that firsthand. This is what Batman does. This is what he usually does every night. The two are chasing him, and there's a scene where Mr. Freeze is in a rocket that's gonna blow up, and you know, they escape using the doors as sleds, and Robin says the word "cowabunga," which, by the way, can we I want to talk about something in this movie before I get something else. Chris O'Donnell, best Robin we've had so far, should have been Nightwing in this movie. There should have been, because he's wearing the Nightwing suit. If you remove the cape, it's fucking Nightwing, and change the red Robin to a blue one, it's fucking Nightwing. That should have been I'll talk about this in just a moment. But yeah, he should have been Nightwing, and it should have been this whole okay, I'm not going to be Robin anymore. That seems a little childish. I've kind of grown into my own. That should have been the movie of Batman and Robin. Their separation. He wants to go out on his own doing vigilante stuff in Bloodhaven, and Bruce is like, no, you're staying here. You're not ready yet. Again, due to Bruce Wayne's trust issue. And then you get Batman. Okay, so anyway, they screw up chasing Mr. Freeze. Batman saves Robin, and then they talk about teamwork and stuff like that, and the bickering back and forth. This is like people talk about, oh, he was just a whiny little bitch. I'm sorry, but Robin's not a whiny little bitch. Okay, he is a young cocky man trying to prove that he's good. In a sense, the writing for these two, and this is where you can tell why the creative team was not involved with this movie, and that they were just pushing out a script. I mean, you look at this and you're like, you wonder why movies like X-Men Origins came about. You look at Superman 4 came about. Creative team not being involved as much as the suits. The suits want toys. That's what they want. They want merchandise. And this is what this movie was. It was a toy ad. But Joel Schumacher, God bless him, kept it together. He tried to get the focus down. Batman Forever had focus. Batman and Robin had no focus. It wasn't Joel Schumacher's fault. In fact, it wasn't even the creative team's fault. Again, I'll talk about this in just a moment. But so anyway, meanwhile in I think South America, Pamela Ivy is trying to conduct an experiment mixing reptile DNA with plant DNA, creating new plant life forms. And while this is going on, her boss, who was also in other DC movies as well, if you watch what's that movie? Shazam. It's the board. It's Dr. Chevy's father. So he Chevy, the one dude, I forget the guy's name, he's basically, using her venom, Poison Ivy invented the venom serum to create Bane, and well, it didn't really create Bane, but to improve on her, killer plants. She wants to make sure that Mother Nature survives. Meanwhile, this guy's making super soldier serum, and this is where we get Bane, not the Bane from the comics or Tom Hardy's Bane, which superior Banes altogether. This is the grunt Bane, who, dumb grunt Bane, yes, madam. This is not the fire rises. Or if it was from South America, the fire rises, Batman. I will break the bat. Which is superior because he's a Spanish character. He's Spanish, folks. And Pamela Ivy finds out what he's doing, and he kills her, supposedly kills her. She survives though and becomes Poison Ivy, kills him, takes Bane, and then they're gonna go to Gotham City to see what they can do. But overall, but then again, then Batgirl shows up and everything changes with that, and Alfred's, and then another thing too, this movie does good. There's some more dramatic moments in this that actually are solidified, the fact that Bruce Wayne, George Clooney, not a bad Bruce Wayne, terrible Batman, not a bad Bruce Wayne. He knows how to capture that kind of, solitary figure. He knows how to capture Bruce Wayne perfectly, public persona and private persona. You really are playing three characters when you do a superhero movie: the public persona, the private persona, and the hero. Batman is a different character from Bruce Wayne altogether. It's more darker. It's more menacing. The voice goes down here. No, it's a lot more stern. He's noble, unwielding, uncorruptible. Opposed from what he was doing in that movie, he wasn't playing Batman. He was still doing Bruce Wayne. It was more like Adam West, how Adam West plays Batman. Now, again, not to pick on Adam West. The man took on the mantle and made it popularized, but to be honest, it kind of failed with that. It kind of failed with his interpretation of Bruce Wayne. So, well, his interpretation of Batman was terrible, but again, Bruce Wayne, Alfred, am I pigheadish? Is it always my highway or the high? That too. The whole relationship with Alfred. Alfred's illness is actually one of the best parts of this movie, because it does have some impact to it. With the McGregor syndrome and stuff like that, because Frieza's wife is infected with that, so it, he's trying to get money and research to get a cure for her in her late stages, which, by the way, people always complain about, if he had the cure the entire time. Yeah, he did, but for first stage. Alfred was entering the first stages of McGregor syndrome. He developed a cure that only cured the first stage of it, not in the late stages. Which I understand completely, and he probably didn't have enough to, get her back into health again. Which, honestly, I always laugh at the Mr. Freeze, motive. It would have been great if they did this in Arkham City. Not Arkham City, Arkham Knight. If somehow or another she becomes like Mr. Freeze. She's cured, but she's like Mr. Freeze, where it's I need to stay in cold. I wouldn't mind that. That would have been a great way to end that arc of Mr. Freeze, where he's been on this crusade of being cold and calc, and then he gets his partner back, and what would happen? Okay, so you cure her, and then what? She's gonna come back to you as she's gonna accept your cold ass. Have her become like a Freeze, you know what I mean? And the two of them can live happily ever after in the Arctic. But it's again those moments too, Alfred's dying and stuff like that, and the relationship Bruce and Robin have in that movie. He's trying to then that's another thing too. The real villain of this movie and the real saving grace of it is another one. Is Uma Thurman's Poison Ivy. Is very accurate. This is Poison Ivy. She's a seductress. She's also a doctor in botany. She's seducing both Bruce Wayne and Batman and Robin. The relationship is being torn by a woman, which is from the comics, again. But and the fact that Bruce Wayne it's fucking with Bruce Wayne's relationship with a new girl, which by the way nobody ever mentions. What happened to Chase Meridian, and this is why I think these are two separate universes. Joel Schumacher made his own. Again, I know people out there. Oh, that's ridiculous. I mean, a director. No, Schumacher made his own universe, and then Warner Brothers decided to fuck around and mess around with that and said, okay, this is your universe. I have forever. Forever's his baby. Batman Robin is not his baby. That's Warner Brothers. It's DC Comics. Warner Brothers ship. Because one of his actors, I forget who it was. It's the Japanese one, I think. Who was in Falling Down as one of the detectives. He's also was in Batman Forever as a detective too. Solving the murders, and then he's a scientist in the second and third, fourth movie. It doesn't make any sense unless it's a different reality. And again, because also George Clooney is Batman in this universe, so this is more of that. It's the Clooneyverse. Let's just call it that. And Schumacher has his own universe. So throughout the movie, Poison Ivy shows up to Gotham City, and she meets Mr. Freeze. She's attracted to Mr. Freeze. This is the only guy who's not attracted, seduced and fall. Let me put it this way: he is not a simp. He's no, I'm not a simp, because again, he's not trying to, get laid. He's trying to save his wife, even though he does have a mistress at the beginning of the movie. Because when he's in his ice cavern, he's like, "Come on, sing." Which that scene shouldn't have not been again. If you let Joel Schumacher do what he had to do. It would have been great to see him trying to figure out a cure for McGregor syndrome and have that extra, those 2 vials being like, this is not enough to save her, I need more dosage. And have, like, I forget who that was in that movie. Who was that? Play Killer Frost. Like a version, like, again, like, her, like, squeezing that, her, like, side chick in that movie is not, like, why do you have a side chick if you're dedicated to your wife? That's my question. Unless she's like a henchwoman or like she's just like there for company. It would have been great if that was like, okay, this is Killer Frost in that universe. Okay, fine, that would have made more sense. But my problem with this movie too stems from, like, again, you can see where the studio stuck their fingers in the pie. And it sucks too, because this actually has like a good premise to it too. Granted, does the team up of Bane, Ivy, and Freeze make any sense? Unless, like, you choose Arnold Schwarzenegger to play Bane and he's just using the two to just kind of fuck with Gotham City and, and all that stuff. But I will say this though. About Batman and about Ivy meeting Mr. Freeze is that the plan doesn't make any sense unless it's like, okay, I'll leave like one spot of the earth that's not covered in ice for you so you can regrow, and I'll stick to the colder parts of the world, and But there's a scene in it that makes me laugh where, like, Poison Ivy is busting out Mr. Freeze with Bane, and Poison Ivy's like, I see, but what do you want in return? And she just looks down, like that, like, oh, I see, you want his popsicle. You just got, like, turned on by the Iceman. Like, you just want to see how cold he is down there. Oh my. Like, it's still, again, these movies, it has that sexuality, but it's very subtle. You know what I mean? It's like, this is like what's missing from, like, Nolan's trilogy. Take me seriously, take me seriously. It's like all of them have that. Even like Zack Snyder's. There's no sexually fun things unless you get the Suicide Squad with Harley Quinn. But it's like there's no sexual tension that makes it interesting. You know what I mean? And granted, I'm not saying sexualize it to the point of like Disney. I'm talking about like having that little fun in there. This is what comic books are all about. This is what fantasy is all about. Letting our inner demons out and letting it have fun. I don't get the fact that we have to, like, again, the new Batmans are just kind of shit. Like, I'm kind of Batman out. Am I having superhero fatigue? Maybe it's because it's the fact that some of these superhero movies absolutely suck. And it's not just the fact of just the overabundance of it. It's just the fact that you're making poor quality superhero shit, man. I mean, fuck's sakes, you could say that X-Men is a superhero movie. I do. But it's his own thing. It's lighthearted Watchmen. But, even Spider-Man, like, even then, it's like, this has been going on a little longer. I feel like a little longer than, like, the cowboy genre. Like, than the Western. Tell me if I'm wrong about this. Do you think I'm wrong about this? By the way, Poison Ivy. Speaking of Poison Ivy, so anyway, the movie ends. So basically, Batman and Robin are getting tense. There's some relationship issues going on there. Poison Ivy releases Mr. Freeze, doesn't kill Mr. Freeze's wife, but just kind of like disables the chamber that she's in. Batman saves her, of course. So towards the end of the movie, Batman, you know what happens. Alfred's niece, Barbara, should have been Barbara Gordon. That would have made more sense. Basically comes into town. She's basically a motorcycle rider, is trying to earn money to save Alfred so he can rest easily or get better doctors. And pay back Alfred for putting her through college. And so anyway, she's trying to pay back Alfred by doing motorcycle races and stuff like that. She discovered through Alfred's secrecy, she finds out Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson are Batman and Robin. She joins the fight and she defeats Poison Ivy. The three of them go after Mr. Freeze, who wants to freeze over the world. And because Poison Ivy set him off and basically told him, "Oh, Batman killed your, wife," and she wants Botanical Garden. Again, it doesn't make any sense with their plot, but it would have made sense. Like, again, the team up of the two is kind of bizarre, but also could have been better if they got rid of either Mr. Freeze or just had it be Poison Ivy. I think it would have been better with Poison Ivy. Now, granted, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, but Arnold Schwarzenegger could have been Bane in that movie. That would have been fucking awesome. That would have been fucking awesome. Have a Beauty and a Beast fuck up Batman. Think about it. The one breaks the bat, the other breaks his heart. But then again, it's the movie we got and all that stuff. So anyway, they defeat, Mr. Freeze. They save the day, of course, because Batman's awesome. There's a lot of, and again, there's a lot of the Adam West in there, and it does ruin it a little bit, but I'm going to give my thoughts on the end of it. So anyway, they defeat Mr. Freeze. Batman's like, look, we moved her to Arkham. She's safe. I didn't kill your wife. Ivy almost did. I'm going to fund your research to find the cure for McGregor syndrome. And one of the things I like about this, Batman's compassionate. Even though he'll kick your ass, he's compassionate about you. It's like, look, vengeance is a terrible thing. Here, partner, friend, family, will you help me? From the trailer, not from the movie. In the movie, it's like, will you trust me, is like what he says in the Batcave to Robin. So anyway, excuse me. So anyway, the movie ends. Alfred is safe. He's healing up nicely. They give him the cure. Poison Ivy is kind of beat up after, I don't know what happens, because this is the thing, when Poison Ivy gets beat up by Batgirl, she falls into her chair that she was sitting in beforehand, that covered her in the ivy, which makes no fucking sense in the movie. Covers her, and then they release her, and it's fine, but then she falls back into it, and the plant fucks her up. So, what the fuck? Simply punching somebody out would have been better. But, you find her later in the movie. She's in Arkham, kind of, disheveled. She loves me now, he loves me, eating the pellets. And then Mr. Freeze shows up in her cell, which, honestly, somebody at Arkham really fucked up. It's like, wait, where's Mr. Freeze? Oh my gosh, he's in there with Ivy. Is he gonna violate her? Because she did want that popsicle, and now it's like, oh no. Somebody in Arkham really fucked up that day. And you're like, oh my god, is he gonna beat her up, or worse? So it's like, okay. And so the movie ends the way it forever did, where they're running towards the camera, and the movie ends with the Smashing Pumpkins, the beginning is the end, is the beginning, or is it the beginning is the end, is the beginning? There's two versions of that. One you saw in that movie, heard in that movie, where it's da-na-na-na, and another one that was used for the Watchmen trailer, which honestly, I love Watchmen, and I think that that's what I kind of loved about his Zack Snyder's Watchmen. He made a adult version of Batman Forever, and said this is what this movie would have looked like if it was rated R. And I honestly love it. I honestly love Batman. I'm going to give my final thoughts on this. This is definitely a movie made by the studio. This is not made by Joel Schumacher. This is not made by the creative team, because if you look at, again, Forever, dark tones, there's the, stuff in that movie that makes it good. The dark tones, the flashbacks to Bruce Wayne, parents' death. And hell, they're, every time I say this, the Schumacher cut exists for a reason. The Schumacher cut, is there because it shows a little bit more depth about Batman's, struggle between being Bruce Wayne and Batman. There's this scene in it where he finds, the red book is in there, and he's in the movie, he's like, I'll never see my father write in that book again. But in reality, he thinks he remembers it, being that he's responsible for his parents' death, meaning that Bruce is really wanted to see this movie, and that he thinks he caused it. You see that in Batman Begins, where he's like, I did this, because he got scared of the bats in the theater, and they went out back, and They got shot in that alleyway. But in the movie, in Forever, they do the same thing, but they don't. Like, it's in the deleted scenes where he reads the book and he goes into the cave to rediscover who he is. It's suggested that his father forgave. Like, look this up. His father was like, "No, I wanted to take my son to see Zorro." Like, that is fucking amazing. Like, to me, like, people shit on Joel Schumacher, but you gotta realize he made a good Batman movie. He made one good Batman movie, and the studio fucked up his sequel. The studio did. So I forgive Joel Schumacher. In fact, Joel Schumacher, don't apologize. Because you did nothing wrong. I accept your apology, but in reality, you did nothing wrong. I blame the suits of fucking DC. Excuse me. Yeah, I'll blame the suits of DC and Warner Brothers. Why? Because they had to make their fucking toy ad. They had to make their toy ad. They had to really stick their fingers in the pie. And this is what, like, you see this with a lot of, like, movies, too. Not just Batman, Superman, X-Men, Spider-Man. Do you know why Venom was in that movie? You can thank the studio for that one. Hey, do you know why the Cure Pod exists in X-Men 3? Fucking studio. Do you know why Blade 3 was an absolute dog shit movie? Studio. 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 So if you start to Thor, Ragnarok. Studio. Oh. They don't know how to make a film, but they're gonna act like they did. Studio. They make that. They make that movie. They make that movie. You know, not like, yeah, you can blame a director, but like I said before, if you look at Batman Forever, if you look at the first two Batman movies, good Batman movies. Those were basically a combination of the suits and the creative team. Then you get into, say, Returns and Returns and Batman and Robin, totally different and different, you know, spectrums of that, where the creative team had way too much control, and it got really, really dark, which honestly, as somebody who grew up watching Batman Returns, I still hate the McDonald's toys. I wasn't shocked and traumatized by that movie. It's Batman. I grew up, you know what came out during that time, during Batman Returns? The animated series, which was also dark and noir and just serious, and treated its audience like adults. For kids, it was a show for kids, and adults like that show. That show was awesome, and it showed me that Batman stories are not going to be these happy-go-lucky, you know, Adam West, Batman saves the day. Sometimes it's bittersweet. Yes, Batman saved the day, but what cost? At what cost did he save the day? Sure, he defeated the bad guy, but there's still a broken person there. You know, again, same thing with Returns. It's like, yes, the Penguin dies, and it's tragic. You know, you feel bad for the Penguin. You know, he gets manipulated by Max Schreck. He gets rejected by society. Again, you know, Selena Kyle is just pushed to her limits, and you can see the madness towards the end of the movie. You know, not sure if she's dead. Bruce Wayne's even said that he doesn't know if she's dead or not, which she isn't. But that is a sad ending, because he finds somebody he actually, like, connects with, somebody who also is a freak, you know, and it just makes me sad. It's a sad movie, but it's still triumphant, and it's a good Batman movie. God damn it, you know. And that kid, like, again, if you watch, like, that, you know, that one shill of a kid who was like, I thought it was disturbing. I still bought the toys. I still bought the McDonald's meals. I still like Batman. I wasn't disturbed by it. And then you get the Forever, and it's like a different tone of a beast, but still, it still had its darkness to it. Like, that's what was missing. It still had that dark grittiness to it, but in a different tone, a different director, and a different style. Yes, it had neon lights, and it was bright and colorful, but it wasn't pretty. It was still kind of like, it's like putting a black light on just a room and just seeing where the blood stains and cum stains are. It's like, ugh. But Forever was still good. Forever still belonged in that trilogy of good Batman movies. Batman and Robin doesn't, because it's a studio-made film. It's not made by Joel Schumacher. So no, I forgive Joel Schumacher. In fact, he doesn't need to apologize anymore. The man's dead, and I demand we see the Schumacher cut of Forever. I demand it. But again, it's like, this is my problem with people when they shit on movies. It's like, and again, even Warner Brothers has shit on it. If you watch, there's an episode of Teen Titans Go where they're talking about Batman, and they go to the Wayne Manor, and they go outside where a dumpster is, and you can see like a lot of references to Batman, Schumacher, the two Schumacher made Batman movies, and they shit on it. Hey, Teen Titans Go is nothing to praise about. Hell, even people got upset with the third Batman movie from Nolan. People got, a little upset with Batman v Superman. Justice League. Oh, you think that was the worst? And then they make other shitty things along with it. Batgirl. Excuse me, Batman, Batwoman. Later seasons of The Flash. When they get lazy, when you could tell when execs get fucking their hands on it. And this is something I have to say to the execs: stop fucking sticking your fingers in the pie. Unless you've done drugs and have actually made some decent art, you can discuss on how the movie should be made. Focused. And by the way, you're talking about Batman here. Batman's always gonna make fucking toys. I don't care if it's the serious, Matt Reeves, the Batman. I'm the Batman. Oh, the Batman's here. I'm the Batman. I'm a narcissistic. Then that makes him more of a narcissistic. People call him the Batman, but he's just Batman. Anytime somebody's being called it should be the Joker. The Joker. Or the Adam West Show. Let the creative team do what they gotta do. It's still gonna make toys. You just gotta figure out how the toys are gonna be made. People are gonna buy the lunch boxes. People are gonna buy the action figures, the play sets, the Batmobile. Which, by the way, that Batmobile sucks in Batman and Robin. Not bad in Batman Forever. It's still a little colorful, a little bright, but it still was kind of dark. If you really look at Batman Forever, it has some flair from the Flatliners, so that's why I get a little annoyed when people shit on Joel Schumacher. I mean, Joel Schumacher made fucking The Lost Boys, Flatliners, Falling Down, 8mm, DC Cab, trying to think, The Incredible Shrinking Woman, which, by the way, if you want to talk about, Joel Schumacher's no stranger to making over-the-top things, watch that movie. You've got all his other works. I mean, 8mm, Phone Booth, 23. I know that wasn't a good movie, but that was still a Joel Schumacher movie. And yet this man gets shit upon for putting nipples on the costume. It's fucking nipples. I mean, Batman has had some weird-ass costumes. Look him up. And the biggest one of all is purple gloves. Purple fucking gloves. Those gauntlets he has that has the blades on them so he climbs up better and he can break blades and stuff like that. Yeah. He had purple gloves. How ridiculous would you be if he just had gloves like you'd be like, this guy's not intimidating. It's purple gloves. He wore a zebra suit. He wore that Azura suit, the red with the yellow sleeves, that weird ass outfit. He had different colored outfits. And yet, and nipples on the costume. Okay, they're nipples. Who gives a shit? Get over it. You people need to go outside. And granted, I'm gonna be honest, it's I don't care. It's the nipples on the costume didn't ruin the movie. The writing did. In the studio fucked it up. Let's be honest. The studio fucked it up. Not Joel Schumacher. The studio, because they wanted a fucking toy ad. And I'm gonna say it again. Now I'm gonna get into the best part of this, is the casting. So, let's start with George Clooney, because I'm not putting Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is a Batman movie. George Clooney, again, good Bruce Wayne when he's doing am I too pigheadish? When he's doing the Bruce Wayne intimate scenes and stuff like that. And he does it well. He's doing it good. It's where he fails with being Batman is the problem. Batman is a different beast altogether. When you're playing Bruce Wayne, you're playing two personas. The private persona and the public persona. And he does that well. But when he gets to being Batman, he's awful. He's still keeping the voice. Hi, I'm Bruce Wayne. Hi, Freeze, I'm Batman. It should have been, hi, Freeze, I'm Batman. Just serious. Chris O'Donnell, by far my favorite Robin. He is still my favorite Robin in the entire movie franchise because he's not like Burt Ward where he's like that. Jimmy, holy, holy, rusted. I'm gonna use the one from Forever. Holy moly, Batman. I can't come up with a good one. But you look at, you know, you look at his version of that Robin. It's edgy. He's angry. He's angsty. Yeah, you watch your parents fucking fall from a trapeze act and just plummet it to the ground. You'd be angry too. The fact that. But then again, he didn't evolve, and I think again the writing really fucked him up in the second movie. When I look at Forever, Forever actually had the best interpretation of Robin. He's a young, wants to do vigilante stuff. He's angry, he's angsty, and Batman's trying to get being like, oh, you don't want to be like me. There's a great scene. I don't know which Justice League it was. I think it was like Young Justice or something like that. One of the movies where he's like, so what? So he grows up to be like you. And he says no, so he doesn't have to grow up to be like me. That is the brilliance of Robin. Robin is like, watch. There's a interview that Kevin Smith does with Grant Morrison. That Grant Morrison explains the relationship between Batman and Robin. It's a brotherhood. It's a father and son. It's a brotherhood. Batman respects Robin because Robin is that child that died to him. Like, he looks at Robin and goes, this kid is happy. He's excited. He's adventurous. He's not seeing this as just, a punishment. This is my punishment, my crusade. He's seeing this as an opportunity to do good. We are the good guys doing good here. This is the little boy that died in me. I respect Robin for that. And Robin looks at him like, this dude is awesome. He's a billionaire. And he's spending his life protecting people, fighting crime, being a Cape Crusader. Granted, is it vigilantism wrong? Yes, I'm gonna say it like that because I kind of agree with it, but it's against the... Alright, never mind. But he's, again, bad Batman, but a good Bruce Wayne. Chris O'Donnell, good Robin. Good Robin overall. Should have been Nightwing in that movie because he's wearing the Nightwing suit, and they should have changed his red Robin to a blue one. Alicia Silverstone, not bad indeed. I mean, she does a pretty good Batgirl. Nothing to write home to, but still fairly decent. There's a joke in the movie I do like where she introduces herself as Batgirl, and she's like, Batgirl, that's not Batman's like, that. Why not? That's not very PC. Why not Batperson or Batwoman? It's like, let her just. She chose the name. Just let it go, man. You don't have to step in there. And by the way, there is a Batwoman. Not that great. She does a good job. Alfred in that movie, best butler ever we've had. Best Alfred we've had. I mean, yes, you have Michael Caine, you have Jeremy Irons, you have Andy Serkis. They're great, but there's nothing competes to that man who's just very, very, uptight, very studious, very noble, very honorable, Alfred. He plays it with such sincerity that Alfred's a very underrated character. Because this is a guy who's basically Bruce Wayne's adopted father. And yes, he's the butler and stuff like that, but he's still watching out for his boy. You know what I mean? Making sure he's okay. He's going out every night fighting crime, and he's like, I'm worried about you, sir. Every night you go out there, but, I still respect what you do. Very mild-mannered, but yet also just whimsical in his own right. He comes with the zinger any time. Alfred, it's cold. When he's eating the soup, Alfred, it's cold. Yes, it's served like that. It's he again, even I will explain this too, and how Joel Schumacher shoots this too. I'll mention it real quick. Joel Schumacher direction in this is actually good. It still has that anytime Gotham City's in the daytime, and anytime it's at Wayne Manor, it's normal. It looks normal. It has that normality. Yeah, there's some Dutch angles thrown in there, but overall, still goddamn good. It's still well shot. I will say this though too, the Alfred stuff where they're doing the flashbacks, I like that. There's some good in that. Yes, it's good, but again, you can tell like Schumacher tried his best to make this movie watchable. And it's a well crafted, well stunt work too. So I'm gonna mention that real quick. Stunt work is amazing. The acting, so, but I'll get into the villains in just a moment. So, the villains: Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze. Again, like I said before, he could have played this like the Terminator with a little bit more emotions. Not too much, but just a good amount. And this is where I think people kind of shit on him for his Mr. Freeze because of the ice puns, but it's still Schwarzenegger. You're having fun with this guy. He knows what movie he's in. He's having a blast chewing the scenery and stuff like that. But when he gets into the serious moments, when he's talking about his wife, when he's making the ice sculpture, when he's talking about like he's been betrayed, he's putting his effort into this role. Like not just chewing up the scene, but when it gets to the serious stuff, he's giving a good performance. So the scene where he's watching like the wedding video of his, of his old life, and I hate when people talk during the movies. He still captures that, and you see it in his eyes. Arnold Schwarzenegger could act in that movie. He did a good job as Mr. Freeze, and I wish the suits at Hollywood would just kind of pull him back and be like, just kind of release and let Joel Schumacher do whatever he wanted. Like, now I'd say did not do whatever he wanted, but just say, hey, look, let's keep that same energy we had in Batman and Robin. Excuse me, that same energy we had in Batman Forever and transfer it to this. Like, we don't need to make it too much like the Adam West show, because what you had there was a good mix. Everybody enjoyed that. Let's do the same here. Uma Thurman's Poison Ivy. Spot on. I mean, if you really look at it, it's spot on. She's a seductress. She's sexy. She's very sexy in that movie. And just overall, the better villain in that movie. Like, that movie should have been about Poison Ivy. And she's really, like, if you think about it, like, she's wearing green. She's controlling a man who's mentally unstable. She's basically the main villain of that movie. That would have been great if she was, like, I don't know, betrayed or something. That movie. And Bane, I'll go get to... Again, she did a pretty good job playing Poison Ivy, and very iconic, too. Like, there's better Freezes out there, there are better Batmans, better Bane, so the guy who played Bane was pretty good. He died of steroids after doing that movie. He did steroids to do the movie, but he died of steroid use later down the road. But her portrayal of Ivy was pretty damn good, and it's... Until we get a new one, yeah, she did a pretty damn good job. I'm gonna say it up front. Joel Schumacher's direction, he kept that ship afloat. It was burning, and he kept that ship afloat. Overall, what do I have to say about Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and the entire trilogy of Batman, that quadrilogy of Batman? Good. I absolutely like it. Up until Batman and Robin, but Batman and Robin, if you keep this in mind, is a big budgeted version of the Adam West show. Most of them are. But Batman and Robin mostly because you could tell that they were putting a lot into that. They sprinkled too much of the Adam West in there. As for the other three, they were kind of well balanced up until Returns, and you can tell, who really made that movie opposed to Batman and Robin, who the studio made that movie. And thus was the crash of the comic book movie. And up until Blade came out and shotgun everybody, and then X-Men, and then Spider-Man, and thus the rebirth of Batman with Nolan's trilogy. I will say this, though. I would give these movies a rewatch. All of them, up until Batman and Robin. And keep this in mind, Batman and Robin does not belong in that trilogy. It is its own entity in a different universe. But still fun. Still fun. So, yes, Batman Returns, and Batman Forever, fine, good movies. Batman and Robin, total dog shit. Total dog shit, but entertainingly good, well-made dog shit. Not Joel Schumacher's fault. The studio's fault. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. Joel Schumacher, you are forgiven, and you have nothing to apologize. You did nothing wrong. Joel Schumacher did nothing wrong. And release the Schumacher cut of Forever. I will buy that. Along with the Snyder cut. I know I didn't buy it, but I will buy that as well. And I'll have proof of it. So, with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, live, bye-bye. And remember, same bat channel, same bat time. Peace.